So in JavaScript, there is a subfield called DOM, D-O-M, which stands for the Document Object Model. So what we'll cover here is we'll cover the onClick function, JavaScript functions that can be called from HTML, and we'll go over a slideshow example. So, okay. So if you went to a web page, any web page, Twitter, whatever web page you go to, you type www, the name of the server.com, hit enter, and a web page shows up. So the web page might appear to you, this is a very boring web page, this could say, welcome to my web page, and then in smaller print it might say, glad you could be here. Okay, so the web server didn't send you this picture, they didn't send you a picture and the picture showing up. They're actually sending you a file with instructions in it. And the file would look something like this, from here to here. And this is technically a programming language. This is the language called HTML, that stands for Hypertext Markup Language. So the way the language works, it's telling your web browser what to display. So it'll say I have an HTML file, and the way they work, HTML works is with tags. So we have an HTML tag that starts here, and every tag always ends with a corresponding ending tag, which is / the same as the name of the tag. So the HTML file, the whole file that's going to be your web page, starts with HTML and ends down here. Now there's a head section, which if you took an HTML class, there are things you can do in the head section. The head section gets sent to your browser first and could do some validation stuff, like check, are you actually someone who's allowed to see this web page, are you currently logged in? And if this web page is something you should be able to see and there's no problem in this section, then the body of the page shows up. So now we have a body tag. Body tag starts here and ends here. And this is the body. This is basically what you're going to be seeing on your web page. Then HTML has a language that, the H1 tag, that's like a header size 1. That's the biggest header. They have H1, H2, H3. So the H1 tag will say H1 starts here, ends here, / H1. And whatever you put here will appear in big letters. So that's HTML's way of saying, print this on the person's web browser and print it big. Okay. Then after that, so that's why this came out in big letters. Right? This is what your web browser would look like if the server sent you this file. Then there's a paragraph tag, which we use P. So paragraph starts here, and it ends here. Most paragraphs are much, much longer, many sentences. This is just a one-sentence paragraph. So it says, glad you could be here. So that showed up in normal paragraph print. Okay, now by default, the web page, the background is going to be white, and the print will be in black, but you could change that if you wanted to. We could have an attribute called background color and change that to green, or whatever. Okay, so this file comes from the server, which gives instructions to your web browser to make your web browser look like this. So this is really what the server is sending you, a file like this. Okay. So, and when the internet first came out, in 1991 or so, we would send files like this and you would just see what they say. Nothing could ever change. It would just be static. Come back tomorrow, it's going to say the same thing. In 1995, when JavaScript came out, the idea was we could use programming to change the content of the web page. So now suppose we had a web page that says, again, here's the HTML start, here's where it finishes. This page doesn't have a head section, it just has a body section, so that's fine. The body starts here, the body ends here. Now, we have a paragraph. The paragraph says some paragraph nobody cares about, and then that's the end of that paragraph. Okay? Now we're going to start a new paragraph. Now normally a paragraph is just this less than sign with a P and then a greater than sign, right? But now what we did for this one is we gave it an identifier. I'm going to call this ID, and I gave it the name JetBlue, right, like the airline, JetBlue. In addition to that, I'm going to say if somebody clicks on it, so I'm going to say onClick, I'm now saying call this function. Right, so now we're all computer programs, so we know when you call a function, it's going to perform some task for us. And then I have to close parameter. So this is a paragraph, and then the text in the paragraph is actually click me blue, and then that's the end of the paragraph. Okay. Now inside our HTML file, we also are now adding a JavaScript. So the tag for a JavaScript is the word script, and the tag ends with \script. And now inside the JavaScript, we can write our program. And what our program is we define the function. The function is change color. It doesn't have any input parameters, so if you just call it, it's going to perform a task for you. And the task it's going to perform is we're going to go into the document. That's our web page. That's the document you can see. Right? So here's our web page. It basically has two paragraphs. One says, some paragraph nobody cares about. And then another paragraph says, click me blue. They both start off appearing in black because that's the default color. And the script will not run just because a function's sitting here. You have to actually call it to make it run. So the web page would load like this. Now, what would happen if you put the mouse on this click me blue? If you put the mouse here and you clicked it, what would happen is, because you gave instructions that on click, go look for a function called change color. So it's going to go look for a function called change color. So if you clicked on it, then a function called change color, which is defined in your JavaScript section, you have a function called change color. You don't give it any information. You're not telling it what color to change to. You just say call this. And using JavaScript language, we could say in this document, which has two elements in it, paragraph 1 and paragraph 2, I could call a function that says get the element by ID, and I give the ID JetBlue. That's the name I gave this thing. So really what I'm doing with this ID equals JetBlue, I'm just giving the paragraph a name, right? So does a paragraph have to have a name? It doesn't have that one, right? Any of you have a dog? Anybody have a dog? Nobody has a dog? You have a dog? Dog have a name?
Yeah.
Okay. Why'd you give the dog a name?
I don't know, you can't just call it like a dog.
Right. You can't just say that dog, you know, you call it by its name, right? So it's a way to refer to it. But a dog doesn't have to have a name, but just about everyone's dog has a name, right? So, give it a name, now you can call it by that name. So a paragraph doesn't have to have an identifier, but we can add one. And why would we do that? Well, then we can refer to it. So I decided to give this the identifier JetBlue. I could make up names for all my paragraphs. It takes a lot more typing, but at least now I could say, go to my document, find the element, there's two elements, this paragraph, which has no name, and this paragraph, which does have an identifier. And I say, get me the element by the identifier JetBlue. So that's going to say, okay, for this paragraph, I now want to go to the dot style. So the style is going to have several attributes, the font, the color, the size of the print. And then I'm going to say under style, I want the color, and I'm going to set it to the color blue. BLUE is a HTML knows that would change it to the color blue. They have many, many colors, sky blue, dark blue, they have many, many, so I'm just picking blue. So really what it'll do is it'll go into my web page and say, for this particular paragraph, change the color to blue. That's what running this function will do. So by clicking on this, the attribute saying what's the color of this print will change to blue. And then at the end of my function, it automatically reloads the page. So actually clicking on this would turn the print to blue. So there's a lot of function calling going on inside here, but we're getting good at programming. So here's what we're doing. When you click on this, you're causing the function change color to be called. We go call change color. What does change color do? It goes into the document, our page, and document calls a function get element by ID, and we pass in the parameter JetBlue. That's this paragraph, not this one. So now we say get this paragraph. Now with this paragraph, which defaulted to being written in black, I'm now going to go into the styles, and under the styles I'm going to set the variable for the color, and I'm going to set it to actually blue. So then it's just, well, I'm changing the background color, the print color of this line, and then it also reloads the page. So it's a nice way, you can click on something and then have it change its color. So you've gone to web pages where there's a bunch of links, and if you click on one, it takes you to a page. Then if you go back, it's a different color to let you know you clicked on it before, right? So, and they'll change the color. So that's using JavaScript to change the colors. Okay, so let's take this step. I know, like, just you could watch that again, and watch it a couple of times just to see how it, what the code is doing. But we can do it a little bit different now. Now we can have 2 lines. Okay. So in this first example, this function can only change one particular line, the one I named JetBlue. It can only change that one, and it can only change it to blue. Can't change it to any other color. So we might want to make a function more generic to change different lines to any color we want. So now suppose we had a paragraph that has, suppose we had a web page that has 2 sentences in it. It says, click me green and click me blue. So the first paragraph, once again, we have to give it a name. Like when you name your dog, you give it a name so you can then refer to it. So we'll give it an ID. We'll call this paragraph Jet Green. So actually I went to Newark Airport once, and there was a Jet Green airplane. You ever see that? It's the New York Jets football thing. So New York Jets use JetBlue, but they painted one of the planes green. They call it Jet Green. So it's the Jets. All right. So anyway, so I'm calling this paragraph Jet Green, and I'm saying onClick call the change function. Change color function. But now I'm going to pass in as a parameter the name, the ID of the paragraph I want to change, and I'm going to also pass in the color I want to change it to. And then I'm going to say click me green. And then I'm going to have another paragraph, and I'm going to give that the ID of JetBlue, so I can refer to that one. It's like having 2 dogs, and each one has a different name. So I'm going to call this one JetBlue. And then if someone clicks on this one, click me blue, clicks on that, I'm going to say, take the one with the name JetBlue and change it to blue. I'm going to say, click me blue. Then in my program, I have a function, but now my function does more than just take one paragraph and always change it to blue. It can now take any paragraph and change it to any color. So I'm now saying, when you call me, you got to tell me which element ID. You have to tell me what the name is, and tell me what the color you would like me to change it to. It's not going to just always change everything to blue. So now I can call the function document. I go into my document, and I say, get me the element with whatever name it came in it. So for this one, it'll come in with Jet Green. It'll get me this one. And for the second one, if I click on the second one, it's going to get me this paragraph. So I'm going to go get the paragraph that you want the color changed to. And then I'm going to say for that element, so I'm going to call the function get element by ID, and I'm going to pass in the identifier, the name that I gave. And it's going to get me that actual element. Then I'm going to say for that element, go into its style and go into its color and set the color to whatever came in as a parameter. So this one I'm going to change to green, and this one I'm going to change to blue. So if someone went to this web page and loaded it, it would say click me green, it would say that in black, and it would say click me blue, and it would be in black. And if they clicked on the green one, it would change it to green and reload the page. If they then click this one to blue, then it would reload the page again. This one would be in green and this one would be in blue. So here's how you can, use the basic HTML as printing pictures and words on a web page. And then if you mix in JavaScript code, you can make attributes about the stuff on the page change. Okay. Okay, so now this might seem a little bit annoying that you have to give a name to every paragraph. Every paragraph you want to change its color to. You have to give it a name, an identifier. I should stop saying name, because name's another attribute. You have to give them all an identifier, so that way when you go to change the color, it'll know which element are you changing, and then from that element, which color are you changing it to. But we could skip all that typing. This is the same idea. This would be without giving names. So suppose we had a paragraph and we say onClick, call the change color function, and pass in the color we're changing it to. We're going to change this one to green and we're going to change this one to blue. But rather than give it an identifier, rather than give it a name and then pass in that name you made up, you can just say this one. There's a variable called this. It means, well, it doesn't have a name, so just use this one. It'd be like if you had a dog and you called it this dog, right? You had a dog named this dog, right? Okay. Or if you had two dogs, you could say this dog and then this dog, right? So they all keep using the same name. So if you call it with this, it'll mean whichever paragraph I'm in the middle of, the value, the parameter this will mean this one. So I could say for this one, change it to green, and for this one, change it to blue. Same idea, just a little less typing. So now the function just says pass in the element. So I'm not actually giving the ID of the element, I'm actually sending in the element. So I don't have to say get element by ID. I can just take the element and the color, and I say for this element go into the style, and in the style go into the color and change the color to whichever color I'm putting in. So it'd be the same thing. The page would be loaded, it would say click me green, click me blue, they both mean black. If you click this one, the page would reload and this would change to green. If you click this one, the page would reload and change to blue. Okay. And then the other thing we could do is we could go over scrolling pictures. Okay, so inside your HTML file, besides saying welcome to my web page and have a nice day and all that, you could also put pictures on your web page. So the tags for images, it's called the image tag. So we have an image tag, and you have to actually describe where the picture is located. So on your website, you might have a folder called images, and in that folder you may have a subfolder called main site. And then in there you might have a picture called the company logo, whatever your company logo JPG. You can give it a name if you want to. So now you have a name you could refer to it as. You could say how big is the picture. The width is 200 pixels. The height is 400 pixels. So that would be a thin, full picture. Okay, so that would display the picture. Then you could say, welcome to the company webpage. That's a paragraph. And this paragraph has no name, so we're probably not planning to do any JavaScript in changing the color, but that's okay. And then we could decide we want to have below this, welcome to our webpage. Below that, we'd like to have a picture, but maybe every 5 seconds it changes to a different picture. Kind of like on the college website. So how do we do that? Well, we have, once again, an image tag. We say image, and we say the source, the location of the picture. And somewhere on a web server, we have a folder called images, and then maybe another folder called slideshow. And then we have a picture called ss1.jpg. So this would be like slideshow 1. So let's say we have 3 pictures, slideshow 1, slideshow 2, slideshow 3. We give this image a name. We'll call it slide. So just made up a name. Kind of like naming a dog. We can now have a name that we can refer to this thing as in a JavaScript. And maybe the width is 300 and the height is 250. Okay. So this HTML file has 2 images. One of them has the name main, and this one will never change. That'll be like our company logo. That'll always be on the top of the page. And then it'll say, welcome to our web page. And then there'll be a picture below that, and that's the one that's going to change. So we really didn't have to give this one a name. This one we have to give it a name so we could refer to it in our JavaScript. So now what we can do, in our script section, we start our script here, it ends here. We start making variables. So we know JavaScript, right? You say var and you make a variable. So we could say var image folder. So we want to know the folder, where the picture's all located. It's in an images folder, and in there's a folder called slideshow. So that's where the images are. Now image number 1, we're going to call a new image function. So we're going to say create an image variable for us. So it's going to have where is the image, what's the height, what's the width, all the attributes we could change. So we create an image, and then we say for image 1, in its source field, where is the actual picture located, we say, well, it's in our images folder plus, and we've done this before, we have a string and then plus another string, so it just concatenates the strings together. So it's in this folder, and its name is SS1 JPEG. That's picture 1. Do the same thing for picture 2 and picture 3. So we now have 3 image objects, and we have our 3 pictures. SS1, SS2, SS3. Now our web page is just loading the first one, right? A web page would have our company logo, would say welcome to the company website, and then the first picture. But we're going to, with our JavaScript, we're going to keep replacing this picture over and over and over. So we can define this. So now we have image 1 src will be equal to the first picture. Image 2 source will be the second picture. And image 3 source will be the third picture. That's all the variables we set up in our JavaScript. Okay. Now in our script, and one thing about JavaScript, you don't have to put the whole script in one spot. You can start it near the top of your HTML, end your /script, and then start it up again, and it really makes one big script out of it. So we can now have a variable called step. Step equals 1. So step's going to be either 1 or 2 or 3. When it gets to 3, it's going to go back to 1. So now we have a function. So the function is called slided. It doesn't take in any parameters. So if you call this thing, what's it going to do? It's going to go into our document, our page, and it's going to say, do you have any images? Well, we have 2 images, right? We gave them both names so we can refer to them by name. So we go into our images, and we find the one that's named slide. And we actually named one of them slide. And the slide has a field called source. And we want to change the source. We want it to become image, the step, which would be 1, image1.src. Image1.src. So we would like that to be the source. And then we take step and we add 1 to it. So step plus plus, that means step equals step plus 1. So now step would become 2. And we want to, let's say we have 3 pictures, we want to keep it simple. So if step goes greater than 3, we'll set it back to 1. So step's going to go 0, it's going to go from 1 to 2, from 2 to 3. Then when it goes from 3 to 4, we're going to set it back to 1. So it's really going to go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And then we're going to call the slided function every 5 seconds. And in JavaScript, you actually give time in milliseconds. So 5 seconds really is 5,000 milliseconds. So now what we do is we call a JavaScript function called timeout. Timeout, you give it a time and a function. So after 5,000 milliseconds or 5 seconds, we will call this function. So what this page would do, if somebody would call this function for the first time, it will run the function, increment this by 1, and change the picture. Count to 5, call the function again, change the picture, and do that every 5 seconds. So all you have to do is call it once and get this thing started. It will keep calling itself forever. So after we define the function, we actually call it for the first time. So we'll call the picture. It'll load SS1, count to 5, call this function again. It will get the next picture, display that one, count to 5, go to picture 3, display that for 5 seconds. Then it's gonna go to picture 4, but there is no picture 4. So if the step ever gets to 4, we go back to 1. And it shows picture 1 and 2, and just keeps doing that forever. So all the different things that you can do using the document object model. So that basically says in an HTML page, that's a document, there's all objects in it. Pictures are objects, paragraphs are objects, headers are objects. Everything inside it is an object. And with your code, you can change any attribute about the object. You can make print bigger or smaller. So you ever like mousing over a word and the word gets bigger? Right? So instead of onClick, it's on hover, and then you change the font size. So you do all kinds of fun things. But this is a list of all the things we can do. And then there's a hierarchy of in a document. So you go to the document, which has a root element, and then under there is a bunch of body elements, and under each of those elements, each of those have attributes. So you can keep, of all the attributes you can alter them all in JavaScript. So basically what JavaScript helps you do is have your web page have dynamic stuff happen. As you're moving your mouse around or clicking on things, you can run programs. And they all run on your client, on your machine. Okay.